Hello, baddies. Happy Wednesday. Today, we have a very special guest on the podcast today that we would love to introduce to you all. It's Ju Djuin Csontos. She is actually the head of marketing and community at Fika Ventures based in Los Angeles. And she has an incredible story. We're really excited to share it with you guys. But for a little bit more context, she was an early employee at Hulu. You previously worked at Canaan Partners, I believe that's called, and then also Kleiner Perkins. So she has had a wide range of different size organizations and lots of context to share with us. But welcome to the podcast, Eugene.
Welcome. Thank you, Riley. Thank you, Mackenzie. I am honored to do this with you all, so appreciate it.
Yes,
amazing.
Thank
you for being here.
100%. And so we'll just start us off, just to get to know you a little bit more. What is something that you would like to share about yourself, but you don't often get to share with other people?
Yeah, this was a good one. Something I don't get to tell people often enough is, while I consider myself an LA native, I was actually born in Germany in the 80s. I will not tell you which year, but early enough, what is now known as Cologne or Köln, Germany. And my parents were refugees from Vietnam. They left Vietnam to Germany. They had my older sister, myself, my brother, started their life there. I have some really amazing early memories about my childhood, playing castles, going to Oktoberfest. No, I was not drinking beer, but just the smell of the pretzels, all the carnivals and the rides and these large gingerbread hearts that say Ich liebe dich, which is I love you in German. Those are just some of my early memories. And fast forward to the early 90s, my parents left Germany with the family, and I immigrated to the US to LA when I was 8, so starting second grade. So kind of this crazy early of learning Cantonese. I speak Cantonese Chinese. I spoke German. When I came here to the US, I dropped all of that. I dropped all my German language and learned English. And it was really hard, even second grade, 8 years old. And that was a challenge, but took a lot of these ESL, English as a second language courses with my sister, my older sister as well. I'm sure it was even harder for her being a little bit older. But yes, LA native, been here in LA recently from the Bay Area, moved from the Bay Area the past 7 years, working at a couple of different venture firms. So that's my one quick, long fact about myself.
That's amazing.
That's pretty amazing. And you said, are you UCLA, right? You went to UCLA. So you're LA through and through.
That is right. I went to public school in the LA San Gabriel Valley. I went to UCLA and did my undergrad there. And right out of that, I started early career working for a hair care company, learned all about gifting lounges. It's a very interesting industry in itself, and just got really comfortable with marketing product, hair care product.
Yeah. 100%. And so let's touch on that a little bit. Like what kind of person or child were you that kind of inspired you to just take this leap into this life path, which ultimately ended up in venture capital, which I guess we'll definitely touch on later on in the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I first thought being in LA, graduating out of UCLA, I did an internship in entertainment PR publicity. I thought I love this sort of celebrity lifestyle in the terms of just, how do you put forth an unknown person? Could be a D-lister becoming an A-lister eventually. You just never know. And it just was not my personality at all by any means, kind of just like being that aggressive, pushy. So I realized that I always love being a bit more behind the scenes and organizing things. I think I'm a very structured person. So even though I have a degree in English, I really enjoyed just writing, communicating, and just how do you bring people together through words. And also eventually what I learned in my sort of career path, doing events, starting even at Hulu, working on internal communications there, being able to be part of shaping a really young startup. I was employee 33, learned a lot. Wow. You just move fast is kind of that Jermaine phrase of you break things, but you get to iterate and scale over time. So what I learned is that I love bringing people together. And I got to do that a bit in the early startup days at Hulu, building some of these culture programs, whether it's our bi-weekly wind downs, Friday wind downs are kind of like a mini all hands where you get to share what the employees were doing, even bringing on new hires, these sort of new, we call them Newligan videos, and just kind of sharing, oh, these are new people coming in, trying to foster that closeness and intimacy. And it's hard. I don't know if there's a sort of like magic answer to doing that, but you do that really early on and having a focus on that. So I know I diverged sort of on that startup DNA where that's taught me be scrappy, be resourceful because you don't have a lot of budget. And that path did eventually lead me by accident, very much by accident. My former boss, who I worked with at Hulu, um, ended up at Kleiner Perkins. I got to reconnect with her a little later on. No idea what venture was. Didn't learn about it in college by any means. Did not understand what an entrepreneur is. Don't understand what venture or VC means. Like, oh, you get money to chase your dreams. Awesome. And then figure out how does marketing kind of play into that. It's a wild thing. So got my start there working at Klein and Perkins about a decade ago and have been having a lot of fun since then.
That's wonderful. That is so crazy how you were in the, I mean, obviously the like beginning parts of startups and things like that are always, I mean, every experience, every company, every industry is different, but I think something that kind of remains the same is that pouring into the people who are in those beginning months, years of starting a company. And I want to know your thoughts of like being in different levels of working for companies, whether they're in startups or they're kind of like already more established. Like, what is something that you see that's really consistent in like the community building, the, you know, coworker communication, things like that? What is something that like you think is very necessary even for that to be a very balanced and like healthy space?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I think part of that, you learn it by just simply doing. And I'm still learning that, gosh, after all
Mm-hmm.
these years. But I think what I find that is consistent across whether you work at a large company or a small startup is that there are a group of stakeholders, what I call stakeholders, sounds like a big word, like that you need to bring along for the ride, right? Whether it is a horizontal
Yeah.
venture firm where there's 10 or 15 or two general partners, or you're
Mm-hmm.
working directly with the CEO and the C-suite leadership team. I think it's really finding your support, whether it's in one or two handful of partners or leadership team members that that do understand your vision, whether it's a product, whether it's you're trying to launch a website redesign or launch a new
Yeah.
podcast. Start somewhere, right? Start with the vision and work directly with those stakeholders that are going to support and help you lift it off the ground. And that's sort of just been my I guess my principle in going back to with every company I've started at is what is a priority here? Who actually cares about this? We know the whole firm cares about doing a new rebrand, but how do we actually get that off the ground? Work with a few that can really, again, support that and really be your champion, because I think that's the best way, especially whether it's a new employee or introducing a whole large project. Sometimes folks get really scared by it, but kind of just chipping it off together always
Mm-hmm.
helps.
Yeah.
And that's something that was like super interesting that we recently went to a conference together at the same one, and that was like a topic of conversation that came up a lot, and it was just super interesting to see the different dynamics between the different size firms. So it's just like the frustration that came from some of the marketing personnel that like they can't get their ideas across the table because there's so many like GPs that they need to get the decisions approved by. And so I think it's interesting to see like the balance between like, oh, should I start at a small organization and you're scrappy, you'll learn a lot, or you start more at the top and like in a larger organization with more structure. And so what are your thoughts on that? Like that initial reaction to making that decision, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say just dive in any small organization because ultimately you're going to wear a million hats. And that if that doesn't scare you, I think more kudos to anyone that's willing to either start at a small company, startup, or even smaller firm, because you're going to have to punch above your weight, right? That is where, again, sort of that some might start DNA that I learned at Hulu, at working at BetterWorks. You don't have a lot to go off of, right? But if you get creative, you're not just bring more problems to the table, but you're actually getting creative and bring more solutions. That's going to take you such a long way down the path, wherever career you end up choosing, because it's not necessarily dollars solving. It's like, I don't necessarily have 30,000 to go after web redesign and hire like a team of developers, but maybe I can get there midway and we can get sort of like a V1 out. I think that again forces you to really think, it's like, what can I actually do with limited resources? But yes, my advice is go for it, go for small, because if you do eventually, not to say going with a large company is bad by any means, but you may be sort of stuck in one particular role that you're only going to see that day in and day out. You're not going to necessarily get to jump in and run internal and cultural programs and maybe do some website infrastructure and building an intranet like I did at Hulu. It just was never, I never thought I'd do that, but it was kind of like, JD, you showed some potential. We're going to give you a little more leeway and just run with it. It's all about nurturing that potential. It doesn't have to be like, I've got this crazy technical background.
There's something I wanted to that kind of like stuck out to me, and so I would love to know like a specific moment, and this could be across any of your experience, but that you were just like especially proud of yourself, because like I imagine there's like a lot of imposter syndrome or just like self-navigation that is like involved with this entire experience as you're transitioning to these different organizations. So I would just love to know of a moment where you're just like especially proud of yourself and kind of shifted your framework of what you thought was like you were capable of.
Ooh, that's a good one. I'll have to say my transition from startup to working in this thing called venture. Like, what is venture? And that was the first firm I went into was at Kleiner Perkins. I worked for my previous boss who brought me on from Hulu to Kleiner, and it was really much of a test, kind of like, hey, we have a marketing function, and I was still living in LA, and my boss at that time. Kleiner Perkins headquarters is in Menlo Park. So I was doing this crazy kind of like telecommute. Every month I'd go up and I wasn't that connected to the team, right? It's kind of like JD is a lone wolf. She's here to support some marketing functions. We want to do some events. And in that first year, it was really tough because it was just, I wasn't necessarily visible. Also just not having that FaceTime with partners, with assistants. They didn't know who I was. And it was very much adopt the, baby steps, crawl, walk, run together. So we did that at that time. It's like, let's try to get an event off the ground. We partnered with a partner who invested in Zynga and was on the gaming space. He's like, let's do this really cool gaming event together. And I said, yeah, let's do it. Let's get together. We're going to make it easy. All we need is for you to provide us the list, just some of the logistics, and the rest we'll just handle. We've got this. And sure enough, it was a great event. And investment partners are very competitive, as they should be. Word got around that, hey, this event was a success. I want in. And that taught me, it's like, all right, try it with one.
Yeah.
We did. It was successful, got it off the ground. And then we were able to go from 1 to 60 in a year of events, small to large scale events, very much repeating a playbook of some sorts and having different themes. But that taught me this can be done as a person of one, relying on the team, working just hand in hand, whether it's analysts, principals, or even assistants. Everybody's part of that team mentality. And I really appreciate that at that time when I was at Kleiner.
Kind of just shifted. I was actually kind of curious. So obviously we're talking a bunch about like your experience and all the companies that you've worked for and the good and the bad and all of that. But more personal and taking it that way, who kind of inspired you in the beginning to pursue the things that you have pursued? And is there like a figure that you look up to, someone in your personal life or somebody who, works in the industry that you're like, I want to be like that, or at least, took inspiration and was like, what can I make of this and how can I use this for myself and become my own version of this?
Yeah, that's so great. I'll have to start on a personal note. I don't know, many people probably talk about their parents, and I just want to
Wow.
give a little bit of a shout out
No.
As you
to
should.
Shout
yes,
out to the
my
parents,
parents.
honestly.
Oh my gosh, they had to start their lives over twice.
Mhm.
Germany, coming then to the States, not easy.
Yeah.
Not speaking the language, I don't really know
Mhm.
how they did it. Also raising 4 kids. And then just being really, we also grew up super humble, like humble means, but
Mhm.
how do you teach someone to be resilient, right? Like these are the steps. Like it's not really something you can necessarily teach out of the box, but I think it's also
Mhm.
going through some of the hardships and figuring that out. And I have to just call that out for my dad, because he would always say this Chinese phrase, which I actually had to look up to make sure I wasn't making it up. And I'll say it in Cantonese, and it's only 3 words. It's Mo Sao Mei, and that means no hands tail. Sounds really weird. That just means like, what do you mean no
Mosao
hands?
May.
That's right, exactly, perfect. You nailed it. And the translation is basically you're not finishing something from start to finish. So someone else has to come in and do it for you, or it's left undone. So that's really just shaped my mentality and my work ethic. Like if you're going to start something, like do it to your best ability. It's okay if things
Yeah.
come up and you choose to go a different route. That's life, right? Like we all go through that, but give your best shot and do it as well as you can. So that's sort of what
Mhm.
my principle, the way I live by. And in terms of, gosh, professionally, I have to say that I've been so just lucky. I know a lot of folks don't like using the word lucky, but I have been really afforded the great opportunity of having 2 amazing female bosses early on in my career. Again, the one I worked for, Christina Lee at Hulu, brought me over to venture as a test. And I said, let's try it out. We don't know we'll have much success at it, me being remote. She's now at Amazon, helming comms and marketing there. And most recently, my former boss at Canaan Partners, Nairi Hudajian, she is the VP of comms at Figma, was the first comms
Okay.
hired at Uber. So you see a lot of that sort of the theme of
Wow.
marketing and comms, and I just truly aspire um, to be as great. I don't know if I will be. I'm still learning a lot of that myself. Just their perseverance, their
Mhm.
ability to share their knowledge, and also push me along totally outside of my comfort zone. I think it's having that belief, right? It's like you see someone
Yeah.
with great potential, and just not being selfish and helping someone else along the way when life gets so busy and crazy and you're just probably thinking about yourself, and getting
Absolutely.
ahead, but nevertheless to be able to take that time with myself. So I just feel so grateful to have worked for them for a number of years, and continue to rely on them to provide advice as I go along.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a believer that things like happen for a specific reason.
Mhm.
You meet the people that you meet for a specific reason, and so it's so cool to see that there's like so many people that have just like had such incredible exposure, to these like big named companies, and being able to tap into their knowledge is just so cool. And it's like you're an extension of them in a way. Like every person you meet, you're like a small extension of like them in a small way. And so just to kind of close out this episode, I would just love to know, like, do you have a specific dream that you or goal like that you would just love to accomplish within the next like 5-10 years? Like it could be as audacious as you would like more audacious the better. But do you have like a specific dream that comes to mind?
Yeah, this is such a good one. I think when you're in a particular career path for a while, I think you do take a step back and sometimes think it's like, all right, great. Like for me in particular, I've been in events, I've been in that marketing comms mix, for a while, right? Like pretty much out of college till now. And I think about wanting to really give back to the community, and having recently moved back to Los Angeles in the past year, like how can we just nurture some more of that just community building outside of it being sort of like a for-profit
Mhm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
sense, if you understand. And yeah, I think about actually at Fika, what we do once a year is we run a program called Fika Academy with LA Tech. And this is where we provide a tech internship. It's a 10-week internship and we expose underrepresented, could be food or homeless insecure young students in college or about to graduate, and provide them this free 10-week program. And having participated in 2 of those now in my past year at Fika, I just think about, like, what can I do that in a full-time capacity and just truly be able to give back and nurture the next generation? Because someone else, in my past believed in me, whether it's mentors or students or great parents, and helped us get that next leg up. So I think about that a lot, just kind of how I can be a better contributor to just general society and elevating myself out of not necessarily being an adventure forever, but that's always been in the back of my mind since I moved back in the past year.
Yeah. That's amazing.
That's such a beautiful message. Such a beautiful message. I'm so glad that you said that, really. Kenzie, I don't know if you want to close this out for this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast today. We really appreciated everything that you had to share. Baddies, obviously, links to everything, and also where to find us, where to follow us are going to be below. But overall, do you have any last words for our listeners, like words of encouragement, maybe a favorite quote, a favorite book, anything like fun to highlight before we close it out?
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay. I know I keep saying, it's like, oh, these questions are so awesome. It's like very introspective. I'm looking out the windows. I'm like searching my brain right now. What I would tell someone, what I honestly try to remind myself is, look, the good times are great. They're easy, but it's the hard times that are really going to test you, and you'll figure out how to ride it out. That's believe in yourself, that because you've already got a great head on yourself, and that the only path is really going forward. You could go backward, but keep moving. I think that's have that sort of take that step back and know that the decision will come, or the right decision, and doesn't always have to be something you have to act on right away. Because I think in the moment of crisis, it's easy just kind of like scramble and like react, but taking that step back and just, even you have to sleep on it, there is no harm in doing that. So that's, again, that could be kind of be applied towards personal, professional. There's just take a minute to breathe and think about it.
That's such an important message, and also, applicable to both areas of life, definitely.
Right.
It's on brand to what we believe over here in Baddies Mean Business.
Very on brand.
I love it. I love it. So,
Thank you so much, JD, for joining us on this episode. If you would like to connect with JD, please find her online. JD, I don't know if you want to share your social handles right now? ?
Yes, I am so active on Twitter, which I'm really not. You can find me on LinkedIn at Ju Djuin, Csontos or Csontos, or on Twitter at Ju Djuin.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us, Baddies. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.